Alrighty, folks, just so that we are crystal clear, this is not related to the excellent sitcom Martin. Martin Lawrence, that TV show which ran concurrently with Fresh Prince of Bel Air. But no, this is actually George A. Romero's 1977 interesting take on vampire, surprisingly. From director George A. Romero comes a dynamic gothic original. Martin is a misunderstood young man who happens to be a vampire. Maybe. The sun really just bothers his eyes a little. Garlic and crosses have no effect, and he has no fangs. He also doesn't have any vampiric powers, which makes acquiring blood an extremely harrowing experience for all involved. An eerie, sardonic updating of a traditional vampire legend, says Gary Arnold, The Washington Post. Grabs the audience by the short hairs, Austin Chronicle. An outstanding gothic original, says Tom Allen of Village Voice. Now, when I looked at this cover, I thought this would be kind of a moody, edgy kind of movie, and there's some of it, I guess, in there, but this one's got some more stuff going on. When I've noticed, first of all, you're going to notice the grit and the decay of the city of Braddock, Pennsylvania. That's obviously made up for this movie, and yeah, you could tell it's kind of got a little bit of an edge to it. I mean, this is like, I was thinking, okay, instead of having Castle Transylvania or whatever, instead we just move into these, or I guess urbanized would be the word, cities, and you can just kind of just tell that this is just kind of like the demystification of the horror. So it's like, yeah, I'm looking at everything, everything's run down and dirty and grim, just providing the opposite, and I'm thinking, yeah, this adds more to the way how the character may feel or may not feel. And when you think about it and you look, you're just like, is Martin really going to like a vampire, or is he just pretending it? So having it take place inside this unknown city just adds more to his mystery. Of course, it also messes with like how you'd have like Dracula and everything else. Here, it kind of rebukes the standard. For example, our hero, quote unquote, can actually stay in the sunlight. It just bothers his eyes a little bit. The the garlic has no effect. I mean, he even spits one out in a spit taken. Just when you think that, we're finally going to get something with like the traditional want to suck your blood. It's like, yeah, we do get that where the clergyman who's like allowing him residence is like, goes inside, it's foggy, we got kind of like this area and everything. Lo and behold, he appears. He has the cape, he has the fangs. Lo and behold, it's just a costume. It just says it's just the teeth that he spits out. So pretty much taking what you thought would have been, now, nope, this is just the demystification of the horror and just to an everyday person. And also, maybe he gets his blood from yes, he does get his blood, but instead of like using these right here, uses a syringe and gives them like a knockout agent. I don't know what it's called. Melatonin, if I had to guess, and acquires blood from there. So done in the opposite, more medical way, which is very surprising. Yeah, obviously, as I like to highlight some favorite scenes, particularly when he's on the train. He has to abscond some blood, so there's a little bit of, not too much of a ruckus, but enough to where the lady is taken out, uses the syringe, and manages to inject himself with some blood. So That was interesting. It's such a close quarters combat. I mean, this is like probably the most narrowest city train I've ever seen. Where it's like it's not even that big. I'm just like, eh. Yeah, the way how Pennsylvania looks. I mean, it's interesting. It is definitely urban. There's like the urban decay going on, and you could just tell these yawns. And it just I don't know. I just like the city, but yeah, definitely when he needs to acquire more blood again. There's actually an interesting struggle where earlier he was pretending to be deaf in order to get some money or whatever. So he returns to this house and actually manages because the lady who is there is having an affair. So what does he do? He after a scuffle, manages to knock them both out. Well, that means having to, like, do non-violent ways of hurting. They're just mainly using the liquid and going against them. Lock them inside a door. And after a scuffle and everything, manages to withdraw the blood out and then just like that, in order to keep himself going, which, interesting. So he does get blood from pretty ladies, but then eventually he realizes that that when he has some sexual relationships, his desire for blood is going down. So I guess one could say technically that this is his sexual frustration, and he is trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Make up for it by going out and doing it another way, I guess, in an act of rebellion or whatever. So say what you will about that. I found that to be interesting. And of course, the other big one is sensationalism and how his family has been nothing but extremely religious fanatically, which, trust me, will result in some deviation. So what does he do instead? Yes, he goes to live with his grandfather or whatever, but at the same time, when being told that, you're being called freaking Nosferatu, yeah, you're going to tend to just not like a certain person and beyond like saying, hey, a family in the old country is like, hey, like 9 of us were afflicted with this plague of being immortal or whatever. So you can tell that it's also that this really has an effect on him. And even when our hero calls into this guy named Barry online to get on the radio, get some advice, instead blows it out of proportion, makes it sensationalistic, yes, adding into what supposedly could be real, just makes it more, I don't know, bigger than it really is, blows it out of proportion, which I'm just like, boys, that common. So yeah, obviously the person who's portraying him here is John Amplis. Does a good job of one being in between. Is like, is he really the one is he really a vampire, or is he just taking his frustrations out, pretending to be a vampire and just being the type of person, just being the not manipulator, but not act down. You know what I'm looking for. The guy with the goatee, Lincoln Mazel. Don't know anything about him. Does a gosh darn good job playing the religious fanatic, and he's got the goatee and clothes to match, so you can tell he's got some presence about him. Christine Forrest is fine as a woman named Christine there who plays a sister or whatever. And it's like it's pretty good for the inversion of all the tropes. Oh, and I gotta mention here, there's also some supposedly you could tell right here pitchforks and everything else, what you think would be like straight out of the old Universal movies of Frankenstein and Dracula and everything. But could that just be his fantasies running wild of what supposedly happened to him as a way of trying to cope with everything? Make of that what you will. Do I believe that he's a vampire? No. Personally, no. He's probably just some person who's just snapped and ultimately just led to a different double way of living. So yeah. What some people may not like about this is the gritty urban locations and how it's starting to decay and everything else, and that just may not please those who want colors and everything else. And yes, this I didn't notice some green, but I noticed that it adds more towards the realism of the movie, and it is definitely slow paced. The budget was $100,000. So it's not going to have like any flashbang special effects or razzle dazzle, but it is more grounded. But yes, it is slow, but not too slow. Is what I've noticed, and it's kind of misleading artwork, which I thought would be kind of like emo-ish. It's just more, yeah, I don't know. I guess urban gothic, if that's even a thing. So say what you will about that. So with all that in mind, it's like, what would I rate this? I would definitely say that you should watch this a couple of times. This was like a 3.5 out of 4. So yes, I highly recommend that you watch Martin.